Hey everyone, I posted a podcast link about how money and represents your time and energy. And the podcast link was to an interview with Jack Mallers, the founder and CEO of Strike, Strike, who is, other than maybe Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers is, I would say three of the sort of biggest brains in Bitcoin are probably Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, and maybe Lynn Alden. There's others, but as far as just deep thinkers that I actually learn from regularly, Jack Mallers is certainly one of them. So anyway, Jack was talking about how money represents your time and energy, which is really, the way he explained it is really profound. And it's absolutely worth going and listening to that podcast episode. I posted it last week, but I will also post a link to the YouTube video of Jack Mallers for the exact same podcast, which is the What Bitcoin Did with Peter McCormack. So if you want to find it on Apple Podcasts, it's the What Bitcoin Did podcast with Peter McCormack, and the interview with Jack Mallers of Strike is within the last week or two, something like that they posted it. Okay, so money represents your time and energy. So let's talk about that, because I think it's a really important concept. So we use money. Money is a technology that we use to avoid having to barter, because otherwise we'd have to trade, shoes and leather and, pots and pans for other items, and that results in us all needing to have something the other person has. Whatever somebody's selling, we have to be buying at that exact time and that exact place and that exact quantity. And obviously it's really hard to sell a cow, because you have to have everything you need from the cow, from all different people all at one time. And, they all have to be in the mood to buy some beef. So anyway, so what do? Well, we use money, and what money actually represents, which most people don't think about, and Jack Mallers did a great job of explaining, was money represents your time and energy. So when you have money, you got it through time and energy somehow. So here's what I mean. If you worked for it, that money represents your time and energy, which is your effort to make that money. If you traded a product or service, or a product for it, then you had to expend time and energy to create the product in order to exchange that for money. If somebody gave you money, well, they had to expend their time and energy to get that money. And if somebody gave you, again, a product that you then sold, well, that product was bought with somebody's labor and effort and time and energy. So it always goes back to the fact that money ultimately represents time and energy, either by the person who originally made the money, or by, somebody farther back in the line, or perhaps if you inherited money, well, it represents the time and energy of whoever you inherited the money from. So this has a bunch of implications. One, Michael Saylor talks about the fact that people will spend 40,000, 60,000, 80,000 hours trying to make money, but then spend no time trying to figure out how to preserve it. So if you're going to expend that amount of time and energy to make money, then it's actually super important that you use a money that is actually going to preserve the purchasing power of all of that time and energy. Because why would you expend all that time and energy in order to exchange it for a money that is just going to then be debased by the government? Debased meaning diluted by the government printing more. So it also, per the sort of government money printing, has profound impacts on how you think about the government's money printing, right? Because what you spend all of your time and energy doing, the government prints out of thin air. So you can spend, an entire year, most people work, 40 hours a week for 50 weeks with 2 weeks of vacation out of 52 weeks in a year. So that adds up to 2,000 hours a year. So the average person is working 2,000 hours a year. And let's say you make, I'll use a round number, $50,000 for that. So the government, goes into, rather than having to expend time and energy, they either tax it from you, which is a way they take away your time and energy, is they tax it away from you, or they borrow, which is essentially borrowing time and energy from the future, because someone in the future is going to have to expend time and energy to pay back the money that was borrowed, or they print it out of thin air. And when they print it out of thin air, give me 1 second here. Flies bothering me. When they print money out of thin air, they're essentially, it's a time theft. They are stealing time and energy from you and from everyone in the future, because they are creating out of thin air something that they did not work for and something that nobody worked for, which has the effect of diluting your time and energy and making your time and energy less valuable. So when you think about it that way, it should make you mad at the government, because, the government steals huge amounts of your time and energy by printing money, by borrowing it from future generations or a future version of yourself that's going to have to pay it back, or that they tax it away from you and tend to use it for stuff that is, not what you would use the money for yourself if you had the choice. So anyway, so a couple of takeaways from sort of how to think about it is, okay, if money represents your time and energy, then you should spend as much time, maybe not as much time, but you should spend a substantial amount of your time not only figuring out how to make money, but then how to preserve it and what is the right kind of money, so that your time and energy is preserved as effectively as possible. And as I've talked about numerous times, I think Bitcoin preserves your time and your energy better than any other money, which is why I have 96% of my liquid net worth in Bitcoin, because I believe it is preserving all of the time and energy that it took for me to earn that money. I believe it will preserve that time and energy better than anything else. Also, it's really interesting because Bitcoin actually, it doesn't just represent time and energy the way gold does. In some ways they're similar, because gold, when somebody gives you gold, it represents the time and energy that it took to dig the gold out of the ground. So as opposed to fiat currency, which is made by fiat, which is the government just makes it up and says it's worth something, that does not represent anyone's time and energy. So typically, the Federal Reserve runs on a database, an Oracle database, which most companies use either Oracle or Microsoft for their database technology. And the Federal Reserve runs on an Oracle database. So when they want to make up more time and energy, they don't actually have to expend any time and energy. All they do is they go into the Oracle database and they, whatever amount of money they need, they just put that number in the, in the database, and magically that amount more of money exists in the system. So, but hard money, when people say hard money, they use the word hard because it's hard to make more of. Hard money, like gold or Bitcoin, requires time and energy. So if somebody gives you an ounce of gold, somebody had to work really hard, expending time and energy, to get that gold out of the ground. So the reason gold is valuable is not because you own a fractional portion of all the gold in the universe, because there's actually a ton of gold in the universe. There's actually a ton of gold on planet Earth. In fact, in the oceans have trace amounts of gold. So if you actually could find a way of getting the gold out of the oceans, it would be vast amounts of gold. So, but what gold represents is the time and energy it took to get out of the ground. So when you own gold, you're getting a physical representation of time and energy. Because again, you wouldn't be physically holding that piece of gold if somebody had not expended the time and energy to go dig it out of the ground and package it up and purify it into a coin and then give it to you. Well, so when Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin, the goal was to create a digital representation of time and energy. And so the way Satoshi Nakamoto did that is the time element is the 10-minute block time. So the amount of Bitcoin in circulation, which will never exceed 21 million, each of those Bitcoin were issued onto the network at an average of a 10-minute interval. So the whole Bitcoin network is being constantly secured and audited constantly, but every 10 minutes a new block is mined. About every 10 minutes, it goes up and down, but it's the target is about 10 minutes. So about every 10 minutes, a new block is mined. So Bitcoin literally has time as an element built in, because no matter how hard you work to mine a Bitcoin block, the difficulty adjustment is going to keep getting harder to keep it right at 10 minutes. And then if people work less hard to mine a block, the difficulty adjustment will get easier to keep it at 10 minutes. So Bitcoin has the concept of time as it relates to money representing time and energy. Bitcoin has the concept of time built in with the 10-minute block time. Bitcoin also has the concept of energy built in, because obviously in order to mine a Bitcoin block, the Bitcoin miners have to use electricity. So there's a very real world tether, anchor to the real world, because you cannot mine Bitcoin without expending energy. So if somebody has a Bitcoin, you know that sometime in the last 16 years, 1/6, which is how long Bitcoin's been in existence, you know that at some time in the last 16 years, somebody had to expend time and energy to mine that Bitcoin. Every single Bitcoin that's owned by anyone, anywhere in the world, was mined by somebody who had to expend time and energy. And there is absolutely no way around that. They absolutely expended time and energy, and there's no way to make up fake Bitcoin. There's no way to get Bitcoin without spending time and energy. And in fact, you're probably thinking, what about very early on in Bitcoin's life, couldn't you get Bitcoin practically for free? The answer is no, because as people were mining Bitcoin, even if you were mining Bitcoin with your home computer, you were getting Bitcoin that was only worth, let's say, 10 cents. But the amount of electricity you had to expend to get that Bitcoin that was worth, 10 cents a coin, for most people was higher than their electric bill. So a lot of people turned their computers off for Bitcoin mining because, their electric bill at the end of the month, they may have 50 Bitcoin. But, at 50, 10 cents per Bitcoin, 50 Bitcoin is worth $5, I think. I don't do math early in the morning in my head. I try not to. But then their electric bill would be $10 more for the month, and the amount of Bitcoin they owned was only worth $5 more. Now, if they were smart enough to do that and then just hold on to the Bitcoin, obviously it became worth way, way, way more later on. Right now, Bitcoin is worth in the ballpark of $57,000 per coin. It's obviously massive, massive, massive price appreciation versus, 10 cents. But once upon a time, every Bitcoin, to mine that Bitcoin, cost in the ballpark of the amount of electricity and computing power that it took to get it. So Bitcoin has time and energy baked into the technology the same way physical gold has time and energy baked into the technology. So if somebody gives you gold, time and energy was expended to get it. If somebody gives you Bitcoin or you buy it, that time and energy was baked into that Bitcoin, and it represents, Bitcoin represents that, which is what ultimately all money represents time and energy. That's what it is. It's a way of using a representation of time and energy, in the near term, so that you can buy stuff later as opposed to now, or so that you can divide up your time and energy to buy a little bit of it on a cup of coffee, and a little bit of your time and energy is over here on a new pair of shoes, and a little bit of your time and energy is used to buy something else. So the reason that works is because money represents your time and energy. So the takeaways from all of this is money represents your time and energy. All good money, meaning all hard money that's based on anything, has the concept of time and energy baked into it, whether it was gold or silver or rye stones or seashells or salt or wampum or anything that's ever been money historically for humanity, other than just paper fiat currencies, was built on the concept of money representing time and energy. And the only reason we have fiat currencies is because government, once upon a time, it was based on gold, so the actual fiat currencies were not fiat. They were backed by gold, and that gold represented time and energy. And then the government came along and basically cheated everybody and said, hey, instead of money being based on time and energy, it'll be based on pictures of dead presidents on paper. And people fell for that, which is really kind of crazy when you think about it, that people said, okay, I'll have my time and energy represented by something that does not represent time and energy. And, of course, every fiat currency in history has eventually gone to zero. The US dollar is just, earlier in its life cycle than the German mark or other, Zimbabwe, dollar and stuff like that already has gone to zero. So anyway, but all fiat currencies are trending towards zero. They're all losing value every single day, because there's nothing backing them. There is no time and energy being represented by that fiat currency. So my prediction, which is the prediction of pretty much everybody that's, in the Bitcoin world, is that cannot go on, that people will not forever allow their time and energy to be stolen and debased, and that if a fiat currency always eventually goes to zero over enough time span, which for the US dollar could be decades, could be hundreds of years, but at some point, paper with dead people on them, which is what a US dollar is, it's a picture generally, paper with dead presidents, mostly dead presidents, that paper eventually goes to its intrinsic value, which is it's not backed by time or energy. And so if it's not backed by time or energy, and it did not require time and energy to create it, and if more of it can be created without expending time and energy, then eventually the value of that will go to zero, because it does not represent time and energy like sound money does. So anyway, so to recap, money represents time and energy. Money is a very valuable technology because it keeps us from having to barter. The best money does the best job of representing time and energy over time. And in the digital age, the best money is digital, because gold does not work well as money. And again, I'm speaking from someone who, a decade-ish ago, bought a decent amount of gold and figured I was going to try to see if there's any way I could use it as money. And I came to the conclusion, even with my very technologically savvy brain, that it was bad money. That gold was only the best money in a world before Bitcoin and in a non-digital world. But that if we live in a digital world where money needs to be able to be transmitted over time and space as easily as you could send an email, that gold could not do that. If you try to take gold across the border, it will get confiscated or can be confiscated. It's heavy. It does not transport over time. It's very hard to authenticate to make sure gold is actually gold and it's not actually just a gold leaf over top of tungsten, for example. The only way to really know you've got gold is to melt it down and remold it, which is obviously very expensive. So anyway, so all that to say, money represents time and energy. Bitcoin is the perfect representation of time and energy, and therefore maintains its value over time, over long periods of time. Obviously, in the short term, it can be volatile, but over the long term, it will, I believe, represent time and energy more effectively than anything else, and is superior in its monetary properties to anything else that's ever been invented or discovered or conceived of by humans. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. I would highly recommend watching the Jack Mallers interview on the What Bitcoin Did podcast. I will try to post a link to that to the YouTube video, just because I already posted the link last week. I think it was last week to Apple Podcasts. But I'll post the link to the YouTube video of Jack Mallers right after this video. And anyway, would love your thoughts on any of this, and I'll try to record some more videos. I've been super busy, so I record these videos whenever I get a chance, but I go for, days or longer at a time where I just have no opportunity whatsoever to record stuff like this. So let me know if you need help in your Bitcoin journey. And in the meantime, I believe Bitcoin is the best it's the best money in the world. It does a better job of capturing and preserving your time and energy than anything else. I believe Bitcoin will eventually be the, default monetary system of the world, with a price per Bitcoin somewhere between $1 million and $10 million or something like that. And anyway, here to help you on your journey if I can be of assistance in any way. Have a great day. Thanks.